Welcome to Season 3 of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the bi-weekly show that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada. Our three co-hosts include Ryan Stinn, holder of the highest equipped total in Canada, as well as owner of Unparalleled Training Centre in Moose Jaw, and co-owner of Inner Strength Products, Steve Cassioli, IPF world record holder and medalist, third strongest Canadian classic powerlifter of all time, and owner of Cassioli Strength and Conditioning. Lastly, Avi Silverberg, world bench press medalist, national team coach, and co-owner of MyStrengthBook.com. Today's episode starts right now.
This season of the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast is brought to you by MyStrengthBook.com. MyStrengthBook is a web-based platform for powerlifters to build workouts, plan training programs, and assess training metrics that lead to better performance on the platform. Tracking and analyzing training metrics allow you to uncover key trends and insights on what works for you and the precise variables that lead to greater success. Say goodbye to pen and paper tracking and hard-to-use spreadsheets. Say hello to MyStrengthBook. Sign up now for a free trial at www.mystrengthbook.com.
Hello and welcome to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, Season 3, Episode 2. We got a fantastic episode. We sat down with Htee, and we'll intro her in just a second. But we're going to do a quick roundtable here because Steve got real cocky and competed. Ryan went to a hipster conference out in Ontario, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I was down in Atlanta spectating and doing some stuff at the U.S. Raw National. So, Steve, let's just start quickly with you and your cocky performance competing at the BC Fall Classic. You just hopped on the platform, middle of a training cycle, no taper. You did a 5x5 heavy deadlift 2 days before you stepped on the platform. Tell us what the heck was going on, man.
So I originally signed up for this meet after Worlds, so I was just like, you know what, I want to have some fun with the meet and not really have any numbers set, or just go in on the day and just do what I can. So yeah, I went for Memphis Blues the night before, had a few sandwiches. The next morning went to Denny's. I'm like, yes, I'm going to be a 74 kilo lifter. And I weighed in at 66.8. And the guy weighed me in. He's like, you sure you don't want to make 66? I was like, no, that's cool. Let's do this. 74.
You're like, do you not know who I am? I'm Steve Cassioli. I do whatever the heck I want.
So yeah, I just put my first attempts as pretty much 80% lifts, and I was going to go from there. And I ended up hitting 238 kilo squat, which moved fairly well. 150.5 kilo bench. And then I was like, okay, I chipped the 274 kilo provincial records, I believe. And then I think it was Cole. He said, so I hit a second attempt deadlift at 240. My best is 250. And I could have hopefully went 9 for 9 if I went a little more conservative. But he's like, you know what, chip the deadlift record, go 258. So 18 kilo jump. I was like, you know what, I'm having fun, let's do this. And the strength was there, but again, my grip was not. And I think I got a little cocky there, like you said. And not.
But you had a great meet, man. 628.
It was fun. It was fun.
Total. Yeah, 488 Wilks. And I was wondering about those third attempts because they were all chips. And there were chips on the provincial 74 kilo record. So that's really cool. And you probably pissed off a lot of 74 kilo athletes in the province now.
Unintentionally,
because now the bar is really high for them. And what a great day, man. And moving on to Ryan, tell us about this hipster strength conference you went to called Swiss out in Ontario. How was that, man? What did you learn? What were you doing there?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it hipster.
Hipster.
Okay. Well, if you haven't heard of it, it's the Society of Weightlifting Injury Specialists. So it's really kind of surrounding, more of a chiropractic physiotherapy kind of world where people who are treating weight training individuals, it seems to have, so the first time I've heard of it was last year. I think there was a long gap when it's run by a guy named Ken Kanakin. He's from Ontario. And he had started running them in, I think, the late 90s, and then ran them into the early 2000s, then took a few years off of running them, I think, and then started back up last year. Last year I really wanted to go, but just couldn't justify it. And this year we decided to go. And it was a really good time. Lots of very interesting knowledge. But injury specialist, I don't do that for a living. I don't treat people for a living, but I'm very interested in that sort of world. So whereas Rhea just finished massage, so some of it was definitely a little more applicable for her. But at the same time, there's also a training stream, which had a lot of big name lifters talking about different things. People have heard of. Dave Tate was there, Chris Duffin, Matt Wenning, so Donnie Thompson. So lots of people, that are big in the at least in the States and in the multiply feds more. But it was very informative. We learned about some pretty cool techniques. There's a guy named Dr. David Leaf who has taught Otis a lot of what he uses. I won't say everything, obviously, because Otis has taken some stuff and developed his own techniques. But I think it's kind of where one of the things that Otis bases some of his work on. And he's a very, very interesting person. All muscle testing based movements. And one of the coolest things I saw, and I'll leave it with this, he was testing Kaz. If you don't know who Bill Kazmaier is, you probably shouldn't be listening. But so he's testing Kaz's strength on his left-hand side of his body. And Kaz is globally weak on his left-hand side. So David Leaf tells Kaz to hum the national anthem and retests his left-hand side of his body, and it's strong. So the right-hand side of your brain controls your left-hand side of your body, and your right-hand side of your brain is the abstract side, the music side, the art side. So by activating that side by humming, it actually increases his left side of his body's strength. It's just something like that kind of like makes your head kind of blow up a little bit. So, and there's a ton of other stuff that was just really interesting and really crazy. So,
man, very, very cool. Now you mentioned Otis, and for those of you who don't know, he was on, I think, season 1 or 2 of the podcast, and he's a pretty big chiropractor up here in Canada, working with a lot of the national team members and things like that. So that was cool to hear. Man, I'm not letting you leave the story at that, man. I want you to tell. No, I'm making you tell the Paul Chek story. If you don't know who Paul Chek is, he is he has a few books out, and he's big in the personal training world, stuff like that. Man, can you just what you can of this story with the Paul Chek, please?
Well, I will go in to say that I don't know who Paul Chek is really. I've heard of the Chek Institute, but it's certainly not my world. So I went into, it was the last session of the second day, and I ended up missing half of it because we were talking to Dave Tate out in the hallway. But so we went in, middle of the presentation. I ended up missing half of it because we were talking to Dave Tate out in the hallway. But so we went in, middle of the presentation, didn't really have any idea what it was going to be about. It was titled something like, do you remember what I told you it was titled there, Avi? It was fixing your back pain through
consciousness or something,
higher level consciousness or something like that. So if I'd actually stopped and thought about the title of the presentation, it might have given me a hint of what was going to come. But basically, his presentation was about the fact that if you don't address every part of your being, stuff like, are you lying to people in your life? Are you cheating on your wife or your spouse? That sort of stuff. That could be what's actually presenting as back pain in your life. Without even taking into account physical things, it's just psychological things manifesting as body pains. And he went on to explain that he doesn't.
Come on now. That was a good part.
He's reached such a higher consciousness that he's completely honest with himself and with other people around him. And he's now married to 2 women at the same time. Lives with the 2 of them, completely honest in this relationship. and that that is, you know, the healthiest way he can live. Because his first marriage was ruined because he cheated on her, because he's not a monogamous person. So, you know, he's a very interesting person. He basically explained that he doesn't go to conferences to learn anything anymore. He only goes to conferences to teach other people, because he's basically reached such a higher level that he can't really learn anything important from these conferences anymore. So basically, the goal is to force yourself to a higher conscious state where, you know, aiming to become like a Jesus or a Buddha or a Dalai Lama type person. And I don't know what this has to do with a lot of back pain issues, but that was what mostly is.
I'm not saying that, you know, emotional pain doesn't manifest physically.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But man, just the ending of that story, that's all we're going to leave it at that. So I was just down in Atlanta. I was down there at the U.S. Raw National Championships, and it was coined the largest championship, the largest powerlifting competition in the history of the sport. There was 1,064 competitors over the course of 4 days. It was absolutely incredible. I was down there doing some live commentating. My Strength Book was sponsoring the event, so I was doing some stuff behind the scenes with that. But yeah, I was basically live commentating on the mic, and man, it was 5 platforms running side by side through the whole day. And then what they did is they had this primetime session where at the end of the day, they would bring all of the attention and focus onto one platform where they had all the top qualifying lifters go head to session, where at the end of the day, they would bring all of the attention and focus onto one platform where they had all the top qualifying lifters go head to head. And it was very much a spectacle, very much, a great opportunity to showcase the sport at the highest level. It was great for viewership, the live commentating, stuff like that. And I was just a big fan of the whole setup. It was in this massive convention center. I literally have no other context to compare it to. I mean, it was like at the level of the Arnold's, you know, just with the convention center style setup, the vendor booths. There was a kind of a mini bar set up inside the convention center where you could grab a couple drinks and watch the powerlifting. There was a restaurant in there. You could literally just hang out there all day and find something fun to do or somebody fun to talk to. All the big brand name lifters, sort of thing. Very, very, very cool. Obviously, we all know that Ray Williams squatting 1,005. That was a big part of the weekend, but there was, certainly that, shouldn't shadow a lot of the other performances. There was, a ton of great lifting, and not just in the prime time, but in the daily schedule as well. So I really hope that I really hope that we can keep these bigger national championships. I know that there's been talks at the executive level, like, well, how do we bring these championships down from 400 to 300 or even less than that? And, I think that, as long as we're maintaining a standard and a procedure to get to nationals, so that's not your second competition, why not? Why not have these big championships where it creates a ton of excitement? I mean, like, you can just do a ton of cool stuff when there are a number of competitors, and it was fun, man. I think I'm going to go back every year from now on, just as a powerlifting vacation. It was definitely really, really cool. All right. Hello, everybody. This week on the podcast, we are so fortunate to have Maria Htee sitting down with us, and she's going to chat with us a little bit about her training and her past year competing at Worlds. And let me just do a quick intro. Maria is a multi-time national record holder, Canadian national record holder and national champion. She's a 2-time national team member and a world bronze medalist in the 57 kilo open category. And she is from Newfoundland. Well, not originally, but training in Newfoundland right now. And welcome to the podcast.
Yes, bye.
Yes, bye. Maria, why don't you tell us why don't you tell us a little bit about how you actually got into the sport, and just a little bit about your timeline from where you started and where you are currently now.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I started powerlifting, I was doing bodybuilding competition, and I started with bikini athlete, and I was like nowhere near winning, because I just naturally built with like a lot of muscle. Anyway, switched it to figure, and then everybody keeps telling me that I should try powerlifting, and I was like, no, I don't want to lift heavy thing. I just want to be like small and skinny and weak. Anyway, after I started to switch it to figure, and that's when I started training with Nick, and he given me like a lot of, you know, squat, deadlift, and stuff like that, right? And then I was getting stronger and stronger, and after the figure competition, I have like 2 weeks to decide. So I decided to do the competition, and then I went in, I did really well, and I was like, okay, so, and that's when like the powerlifting started, like the big training and stuff like that. Yeah.
And since then, you've competed at a number of national championships and world championships. I was actually just down in Atlanta, and I was hanging out with Kelly Branton at their Raw Nationals down there in the U.S. And you two are friends.
We're
and
best
does he give you any has he given you any tips along the way in terms of training and lifting?
Oh yeah, he's always like motivation, tips. He's always telling me like, you know, I should keep doing what I'm doing and I'll be fine.
Yeah. So we actually saw some old pictures of you, and a lot of people, when they see you kind of lift on the platform, they might just say, oh, well, she's just naturally talented, or she's like, you know, genetically gifted or whatever. But we actually saw some old pictures of you, and you actually did come from, you know, when you first started, you weren't very kind of muscular, and you didn't really have kind of big legs and, you know, strong looking lower body sort of thing. It's like, holy, that was like a whole different person, you know, just a few years ago. So can you maybe just tell us a little bit about how you've kind of transformed your, you know, your body and your training to be this elite level powerlifter from where you were in bikini into where you are now?
Well, genetically, I was not have a big legs or very small. I used to weigh like about 105. And when I started training with Nick, he started getting me into like squatting like almost every day. And that's when my legs are like started getting bigger and bigger. And like now it's like forget about like virgin, just leggy all the time.
Stretchy pants only.
Yeah.
That's kind of like Ryan. He just wears stretchy pants all the time too.
Yes. Yeah.
So you talked about how you're working with Nick Roberts, and he has been coaching you pretty much since the beginning of your powerlifting career. And you mentioned that he started to get you squatting every day. And there was actually a question that came in from one of our listeners who wanted to know a little bit more about your training. Could you talk a little bit about some of the frequency of your training? Like how often are you in the squats, bench, and deadlifts? You know, what sort of you know, volumes are you doing, or intensities? And I just want to caveat all of this with saying, you know, sometimes we hear that an elite athlete is doing something in their training, and we like to kind of take that and try to implement it in our own training. But what you have to understand is that Maria has, you know, lots of years under the bar to be able to train, you know, at the level that she's training at. So maybe could you just touch on, you know, some of your current training, and, you know, what sorts of, you know, how many times are you in the lifts, you know, what sorts of, you know, volumes are you doing, and things like that?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm pretty much in off season. Like I have like about 5 more months until my next competition. So I'm doing lots of like volume and stuff like that. But right now, currently, I'm squatting like 2 to 3 times a week, deadlifting twice a week, and right now I'm not benching for like 2 weeks. Just have a little bit neck injury, and I'm like bench for like I should be back like next week for benching again. And before, when I first started to doing powerlifting, I'll squat almost like up to 4 times a week. But I know that a lot of people, like, their body can't handle it, but my body can handle it. So it's different. I'm like built different than most people. Plus, I don't feel anything on my lower body anymore. So I just like do it. When he ran my program, I don't think about it. I just go in and do it. And I come home and I forget about it.
Sure.
You've noticed, Maria, I noticed in your like training as well, they're like, you like hitting a lot of, or you do hit a lot of like heavier singles throughout the week for the 3 lifts. A lot of people probably want to know about that because I know obviously people think like heavy singles like in off season are like bad and you should only be doing that as you're leading up to a meet, right? So like, can you touch upon that? Like how heavy do you go? Is it kind of like by feel on the day? It feels like, oh, this is like an RP8 and kind of drop it from there and do your drop sets?
Not really. Well, Nick usually write me my number, so he just work my number. And like lately, I feel really good about training. Like, you know, I usually hit the number, even though it will feel heavy, like heavier than I expected, but it doesn't look heavy. It's just like the way I lived. Anyway, in off season, well, through close to the meet, I would go like heavier than I usually like in the beginning of the training.
Yeah.
But I would go like about, I would say 80%.
So you hang out a lot around the 80% mark. You know, that's kind of a good range where you can see a lot of adaptation. You're in the lifts quite frequently. Do you ever hit any sort of like, you know, higher rep schemes? Like, you know, do you ever get in the 10s or the 8s and, you know, especially for like squats or deadlifts, or would you mostly just keep it around the kind of 2 to 5 rep range and in that 80% mark?
No, I would usually like, my training is like usually go up to like the whatever number I have to do, 1 or 2, and then I'll come back to like my volume. But sometimes like the sets are if it up to like 5 or 6 sets, like sometimes, but if my body can't do it that day, I'll be like, okay, I can't do it that day, and I just forget about it. Like training doesn't go all the way like, you know, sunshine and rainbow. It's sometimes like, you know, you will see like the video is always look nice, but it's not always look nice.
Yeah, that like the 14 seconds of the video you see only gives you a snapshot of that one lift, but you don't see all of the, you know, it doesn't give you a sense of how you're actually feeling that day. It's good to hear that you're human, Maria.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you get aches and pains, and you feel tired sometimes.
Yeah, I say that all the time. I say, you know, I just want people to feel how I feel after my workout, or like when I wake up in the morning or when I go to bed. Like, you know, my body is like beat up all the time, but I love it. I love the sport and I love how I feel. And it's like people tell me I have it come easy. No, I don't. I don't have it come easy. I work hard for it. Like, you know, I have to like put in a lot of work in like gym, and even though I like home and my supplementation and stuff like that.
I want to turn over to Ryan and to get his opinion on this in just a sec, because I see that because I follow you on Instagram and Snapchat, and it seems like you do a lot of therapy and you put a lot of time and energy into that side of your training. You know, doing physio, like doing things like cupping and things like that to massage. And I know Ryan is a big advocate of this active recovery. Can you just touch on that and the importance that's played in your training? You know, you like, what sorts of therapies do you do? How often? What sorts of treatment? Things like that.
I see my massage therapy up to twice a month. And between that, like Nick will do some ERT on me and stuff like that. And I do a lot of stretching in an off day. And well, one thing I want to talk about stretching is like before World, the incident that we had. So my body feel like amazing. I've never feel amazing like that before my competition ever. Before Worlds, like, my body is like feel amazing because I was doing hot yoga like 2 to 3 times a week, and my body was like too loose than it's supposed to be, and everything was like too loose, but my body feel amazing. So one thing is like too much therapy is not good either, I think. But I do see chiropractor once a month, especially close to the competition is maybe every 2 weeks, and massage every 2 weeks.
Now we do want to talk about your World's experience and what happened there. But Ryan, you do hot yoga twice a week, right?
Oh yeah, yep, basically.
But would you agree with Maria in the sense that maybe there's this idea that there's too much therapy? I know I've talked to Kelly Brandt about this, and you know, he stretches, but you know, very, very timed, you know, throughout his, you know, not a whole bunch and very, very specific. But you know, in terms of the therapy, like, is there this idea that maybe there's too much, or what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, for sure. I never recommend any of my athletes would get a massage the week of competition. Since training is so down-regulated at that point, you're not rebuilding that tension that you require in your muscles. So more often than not, having a massage the week of a meet will actually decrease your performance, unless there really is something nagging and you need to have it addressed. In which case, I would suggest just having the work done on, that injury and avoid loosening up hamstrings and glutes and whatever else. I just listen to people like Stu McGill and stuff. They talk about people getting injured because their trainers forced them to stretch something that didn't need to be stretched, right? You don't need so much laxity in your hamstrings if you don't need your hamstrings to lengthen that much, right? It's better to have that tension built into them so you can use that tension to increase strength. So I can see how hot yoga 3 times a week might be a little overdoing it.
I just like the kind of yoga where you lay down in a hot room and you kind of just like roll around and like side to side and stuff. Like, I'll just subscribe to that kind of yoga. Maria, let's talk about Worlds, because it is a little bit of, it's just funny. Like, I was down at like US Raw Nationals, and, a lot of the lifters down there already know who you are. You have, quite a popular social media following. And they were asking me, what was going on and stuff. And, let's just hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So what tell us, you said you felt good going into Worlds. And then, for those of you who don't know, Maria ended up not finishing on the deadlift and wasn't able to successfully complete a deadlift attempt. So why don't you just walk us through just kind of the timeline of Worlds, what happened when you touched down and the game day, what happened on game day, and then we'll have some follow-up questions.
Well, when going into World, it was like I thought that everything was like perfect. Like, I've never feel any perfect than that day before, But what I did wrong was the day before, I went out for shopping in the heat, and then when I came home, my body was retaining water more than it was. And then the morning of the competition, I have to go into Ryan bathtub to soak it upside down to get the water out. And when we warm up, everything feel perfect. I was feel amazing, and squat feel good, bench feel good. But then when I started to for deadlift.
So let's just back up just for a quick second. You had a great squat series where you actually, at that time, broke the world record for squat, and you compete in the 57 kilo category. And you and Anna Filimonova were kind of going head. The Russian lifter were kind of going head to head. In my mind, it's just so crazy how Maria Htee from Canada is going head to head with one of these living legends in the sport. It's just unbelievable. It's so cool to see. And she went for the record, you went for the record, and you actually ended up on top after the squats. You had a really good bench series as well. And I think you put up a PR bench there as well. And then what happened during the deadlifts? You were talking about how you were warming up for deadlifts.
So when I warm up for deadlift, warm up was feel perfect, And then when I was sitting for waiting for my first attempt, I started to feel something on my IT band, but I should tell Ryan or you or Nick. But I was just maybe it's just nothing. I didn't want to worry anybody, and I don't want to think about it. Anyway, I just and I was sitting instead of standing. I was sitting too long, I think. And then I started to feel a little bit cramp on the quad. And I thought, okay, it's nothing serious. And then after when I was okay, this is hurt. And then I told Nick, but it was too late to change the attempt. So it's I learned in the hard way. But right now, I know that I need to communicate more better with our team coach and stuff like that.
Sure. So we actually had and Ryan, why don't you jump in here and just talk about what was happening from our perspective in the warm room?
Yeah, I mean, it was like you said, everything had been going really well to that point, and we watched your warm-ups on deadlift. I watched your last one, and it looked a little slow to me. And I know I looked at Nick and I said, "Hey, Nick, how'd that look?" And he had nothing but confidence. And like you'd said, your day had gone so well to that point that I had no reason to distrust that the opener would be fine. So, it's it's a really a shame how it turned out. It's a really tough lesson to learn, and really sucks to learn that at a Worlds, obviously.
Yeah. And not just for yourself, Maria, but I think for everybody. We had a question come in through our Facebook, and the question was, why did you end up pulling conventional at Worlds when in training you were performing sumo and I think hitting PRs on sumo leading up to Worlds? What was the thought process behind that?
Okay, so I only started switching to close stance sumo like maybe a few months before, and I was not confident with the lift. Like my technique was not solid, and if anyone know me, I never lift with a bad form. So I always like keep my technique and my form like perfect. And even though I know that those lifts that I pull with close stance sumo, it's heavier than the conventional. But my form is like not solid and I'm not confident with it. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to pull conventional like a whirl and see how it go. But when you're not training for something, you're not strong for it.
Sure. And you actually went into your first 2 deadlift attempts doing conventional.
Yeah.
And then I remember you coming back, and then Ryan and Nick and myself, we just kind of were having a little meeting, and Nick's like, I'm going to tell her to switch to sumo. And I at this point, you know, I didn't really support that decision because I was like, I've never seen it actually transpire in competition when you switch a deadlift style, like, and it to be successful. The hit ratio is very, very, and you actually almost got the second attempt. So, what were you thinking, Ryan, when Nick was saying how maybe we should switch to the sumo on the third attempt?
Well, I mean, I thought it was the best call. I'd seen that she'd been training sumo in training. And I figured even just mentally and psychologically, it would be good to make that switch and because we went back and actually rewarmed up sumo and ended up pulling up to, I think, 150 kilos, I think, sumo. Yeah. And they looked really solid in the back. So I think I thought the psychology of it was the right way to go to reestablish the speed and movement, and then have that going into the third attempt. So I like the call. I figured mentally, having missed your first 2, I didn't think mentally, even I didn't think it was going to happen on the third, sticking with conventional. So I really thought it was the right decision.
And when you say psychological, right, often what you try to do is, in a situation like that, when, a lifter's missed 2 attempts, you try to get the athlete focusing on a singular change so that they regain control. Because often when you miss 2 attempts, their mind starts to race a little bit. And if you get them focusing on, one change, or believing that one change will be successful, then that was kind of your thought process behind that. And then what happened on the third attempt? So you went out there. How were you feeling? Like, were you confident with that change? I mean, what was going on in your head?
Well, in that point, I've never doubted myself like that ever in my life. Like when I go into competition, I always know that I'm going to make the lift. I will make the lift. Like I will never miss the lift. Like all the time, I never go in like nervous. But because I missed 2 lifts already, it's just like the nerve is like, oh my God. And I don't even know where I stand. Like, I think if I wasn't nervous and I was like the technique, I think I can pull that last deadlift, because it kind of like past the knee and I couldn't lock it because my grip was too close. I was like, I don't know where I put my hand. I was just like too nervous in that point.
And that third lift, it was close. I mean, it was not far from locking out. So
yeah, Bray, I just want to change topics here a little bit. So you recently competed at the Eastern Canadians, and you set all-time Wilks at 509, and you were in the 63 kilo weight class, right? Yeah.
What a way to come back from Worlds, because I believe Steve, you got the results in front of you, and she went 9 for 9, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. A lot of people probably want to know, will you stay in the 63 weight class there, because you're obviously strong at that body weight, right? You don't have to do any weight cuts or anything. So what's your take on that?
So I think I just want to try, like, if I compete in 63 and not cutting and not worry about, like, my number and so like that. I just wanted to see how much more I can do. But, I feel really good. But I do like to compete in 57 because it's more competitive. and I want the record in 57, like in the world class level. So I think going into national and world, I'll be competing in 57 again.
Yeah.
So is that
Unless
so you
I
weighed in
can't stop eating cake.
so you weighed in
hot pot.
at 60.2, Maria. Is that basically where you kind of walk around at most of the time?
Well, usually I'll be around 59, but the last few months, eating lots of hot pot.
So, Maria, I'm going to ask you a hard question now. All right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've had some fantastic success in the sport, and this past, competition at Eastern Canadians is just representative of that. You put up the all-time Canadian female Wilks, and that's just unbelievable considering the talent that we have in Canada. When you get into competition, there's often been talks between Ryan or I or the other coaches who are, handling you at these international competitions around your choice of attempt selection. I do notice that your attempt selection at the Easterns was actually quite different. It looked a little bit more conventional, I guess I would say. Like your attempt selection jumps looked a little bit more conventional. But previously, the sorts of attempt selections that you're taking in competition, they're very, very small percentage jumps, I remember like at Worlds in Finland, we were taking 2.5 kilo jumps, or 5 kilo jumps, but not big percentage jumps. What's kind of your thought process around attempt selection? Have you, could you talk a little bit about that? Like how were you selecting attempts maybe a year or 2 years ago? Was there any sort of thought around, your attempts leading up to this past Eastern Championships when you went 9 for 9? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, like last year and before that, like I'm like new to sport, and like when I'm training in the gym and so like that, I don't jump big. And but after World, on my training, especially deadlift and stuff like that, I started to learn how to jump like a little bit bigger than I would usually, like, maybe 10 pounds or like 15 pounds or something like that, right? So, but like my body is maybe get used to jumping like a bigger, like in deadlift and stuff like that. But for bench, I wouldn't jump like more than what I do, like, 5 kilo and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I'm noticing that like when you at Easterns this past meet where you put up the all-time Wilks, you actually jumped 10 kilos from your first to second deadlift and another 10 kilos from your second to third deadlift. You went 160, 170, 180. And I don't think I've ever seen that from you before doing a 10 kilo jump. So does it come back to training? Like, do you have to really become confident in bigger jumps in training? And would you recommend that to, like what sort of advice would you give somebody, like another, newer lifter in terms of like trying to gain that confidence in taking bigger jumps?
Well, I've always struggled with deadlift. You guys know that, like, my deadlift was like my weakest lift. But when I switched it to the wide stance sumo, it was like I hit a jackpot. It was just like, doesn't matter what you put on the bar, I can lift that. Well, not more than like, what my body is capable, but like if I was able to pull it like off to inch off the floor, like, I think my block pull was like 400 pounds, and I could pull that off the floor if I have that in my hand once.
Fantastic. Yeah, great answer. Another question coming on the Facebook page, videos of Maria, she gets really excited before a lift, and that's not kind of how you are in real life. Like, you're, a little bit more laid back, but you do get fired up. So what do you do mentally to prepare for a big lift? This person who wrote in noted that they always see you kind of get dialed in. So what sorts of like psychological tools or tips or cues do you use to get fired up?
Well, my background is fighting, so I used to fight. So it's like when you go in, you have to be like, hyper, and can't be too much hyper either. Like when I'm in training, I don't hype up. I just like go in and do it. But when the competition, I turn it on, and it's like when I switch it on, it's on. I try not to get too nervous, because I think if you get nervous and you treat it like, oh my God, it's like you put too much pressure on your body. And like for me, when I first started compete in powerlifting, I never aimed to become the best female lifter in Canada. I always look up to Ryan, Sarah. They're like, really, Jessica. They're like really good lifter. And I was like, one day I want to be strong like them, but I don't want it right now. I want it like in the future. So when I go to competition, I don't aim big, and I just say, I want to hit all the number. And I told Nick, put the number for me, and I want to hit all of them. I don't want to like go in and to put too much pressure in my body. But I think at World, it's like, that's what happened. Like I tried to I expecting too much, and that's when everything goes wrong.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like if you put too much like pressure on yourself, right? Just like, freak out. It's kind of just like, go in, have fun. It's like on the day, I have this in me, and this is what we go for, right? And that's a great way to, like how you said it there. That's good. Another question I think a lot of people want to know is, what are your plans for this next upcoming year? Like, what meets you're going to be doing? You said nationals and then qualifying for Worlds, hopefully, right?
Yes, national qualify for World. I'm like 50% about World. But to think about it, I really, really want to go, but it's like a little bit far, so we'll see.
So tell us about that. Yeah, tell us about that. So I mean, a lot of people think that, I don't know, they think that these top level lifters, all they do is just train all day and they just recover all day, but you got a life going on too.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work versus training hours and stuff like that? Like, are you balancing a lot on the go? Can you give us a little bit of insight into the life of Maria?
So I work as a personal trainer in the gym. Most of my clients are just average everyday people. Have lots of clients who are doctor, lawyers, and engineering and stuff like that. So most of my clients are like, I don't need to go in too much detail with them. So it's like stress free. Anyway, so I'll do up to like 6 to 7 clients today, and I will do my training session whenever I get time, like between, and usually would take me like 2 hours. So whatever like better time for me. Like when I first start to work here, I try to work for other people an hour, but now I start to learn like, I have to work in my hour. So I put my training first, and I schedule other people workout around it.
Now, rumor has it, Maria, that you might be moving to Alberta. Can we just get the facts straight for once? Like, what's happening? Are you moving or not?
Yes, I think 99% sure I'm moving to Calgary, around January.
I don't know if you know this, but there's a fantastic gym in Calgary, and there might be like a quasi-handsome lifter who runs a podcast with Steve and Ryan, who trains in Calgary, that you may want to hook up with.
Oh yeah,
and get some bench pressing in.
He doesn't squat though, so I wouldn't go there.
No,
I agree.
So speaking about that,
go ahead.
One of the questions that came in on Facebook was that being an elite lifter and training in what most people would consider is, from your videos at least, a more casual looking gym. Do you think it actually changes anything for you? Do you think it holds you back mentally or physically?
A little bit, but because when I'm training in a public gym like this, I can't train on. Like I have to be like a little bit hasty. Especially I work in this gym, so I can't be like all like, aggressive, like with my lift. I have to be like, oh, so sorry, I'm lifting too much, Like especially yesterday, I was deadlifting, and a guy decided to walk right in front of me and stand there. And I didn't see him when I was picking up the bar, but I saw him on the top, and I almost lost it. And I was like, I can't even say anything to him, because I work here. And I was like, yeah, a lot of time, like people, most of the demos are really nice, but they don't get it. Like they don't know, like, I have to like be very focused when I'm like going to lift. So they'll talk to me during my like 365 squat on my back, and I was like, not right now.
Yeah, a lot of the guys probably freak out. They're like, oh, are you sure you can do this? You need a spot? And you do it, and they'll probably just freak out and walk away.
Yeah. Well, I find it, I don't mind like squat and deadlift, but benching and publishing is like the worst because especially when I go out to like heavier like weight, I can't find anyone to spot me. Like if you ask someone to spot me, they just pick up all the weight and drop it on you, and you're like, my shoulder is gone. Yeah.
To wrap up here, Maria, what can you tell us a little bit about? You talked about we've kind of jumped back and forth, but you talked about your meet plans. You're definitely doing nationals, and there's quite a bit of time now between now and nationals and prepping for that. What are some of your goals? It could be numbers that you want to hit or milestones, things like that. And do you have any sort of technique goals that you're working on right now? Because I know that when I've talked to you offline, you're always consistently trying to think about how to refine your technique as well.
Well, I want to be able to hit this number that I did in 63 weight class in the lower body weight, like 57. So that's what the goal right now. I personally, I don't like to talk big. So I want to be able to hit those numbers before I talk about it.
Cool.
But I really, really want to get the world record squat and the world record like total, like someday, maybe next year.
Very cool. Very cool.
Oh, I have an answer for Linda. She was asking question, what is my favorite accessory exercise?
I love Linda. What a fantastic lifter from Ontario.
I know, I love her too. So I'm going to answer her. My favorite accessory exercise is shoulder and back. I love shoulder and back. I love the feeling of the pump.
That's just the old school body. That's just the old school bodybuilder in you, Maria.
Yeah, I know, but I do love it.
That's very cool. Very cool. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Maria. I know that a lot of people were wondering about, a little bit about your training and worlds and future plans and things like that. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, can you just tell us a little bit about your Instagram, Facebook, things like that? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. You can direct message me or Facebook message me. My Facebook is Maria Htee. My Instagram is Htee. Anytime. And thank you guys for support. And I really, really appreciate you guys having me today talk about my game plan.
So one final question is, Maria, do you have a Newfoundland accent?
Eba.
Yeah, bye.
Well, 10 years I learned English in Newfoundland, so I technically I don't have Newfoundland accent, but I do have like a little bit of Newfoundland accent. When I first came here 10 years ago, I do not speak any English at all. So all my English that I learned are from Newfoundland. So I'm sorry if you.
No, I was gonna say you speak better English than most Newfies I've heard. So.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Maria. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Maria.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank Maria for coming on.
Ryan, what should people do now that the podcast has ended, this episode? What do the listeners need to do?
Sign up for my strength book.
Man, great answer.
Sorry.
But also,
also they should go on Facebook, and we have a page on there now, Canadian Powerlifting Podcast. Go on there, like the page. We're going to start up a new series here that'll be launching with our next episode. So check out the Facebook page for more information on that, and keep up to date with everything that's going on.
all right, folks. Toodaloo.
Kaka.
Caw.
Caca. You've been listening to the Canadian Powerlifting Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best of powerlifting in Canada, hosted by Stephen Cassioli, Ryan Stinn, and myself, Abby Silverberg. Please follow us on Instagram and check out our website for some great free powerlifting content at www.canadianpowerliftingpodcast.com. If you like what you heard today, please rate our podcast on iTunes, and don't forget to listen to every other Thursday for a brand new episode.